It's the end that the moment has been prepared for. Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. Today's Doctor Who review is none other than Logopolis. So, what is the story of Logopolis? Well, it's a story about the universe ending, to put it in a pin. Essentially, the Doctor and Adric land on Earth, and they find themselves in a bit of a pickle when the cloister bell begins to ring. Then the Doctor finds himself in bigger of a pickle when it seems like the TARDIS has landed within inside of itself, and it seems to keep shrinking and growing to an immense kind of unpredictability. For the starter of the kind of serial, the TARDIS begins to shrink itself, but not before the Master begins to intervene and play around with the TARDIS itself. The Doctor also finds himself coming into contact with a young stewardess on her first day to Houston Airport. This Australian beauty, known only as Tegan Jovanka, finds herself in a kind of predicament in which she starts to moan at the Doctor after trying to phone for help. She can't find her own Aunt Vanessa after an incident on the motorway where they get a flat tyre. The Doctor then has to break the sad news to Tegan that her Aunt Vanessa won't be coming home as she has been shrunk by the stellar manipulator, which seems to have, or the tissue compression, I should say, sorry, not stellar manipulator, the tissue compression eliminator, which has essentially shrunk her aunt down to the size of a doll. Tegan is, of course, absolutely distressed, and then it turns out that the Doctor has a bit of a cat and mouse chase on his hands after the Master seems to stow away off into a planet known as Logopolis and starts messing with the Thinkers. The Doctor has gone to Logopolis to figure out what's going on with his size problem. However, it turns out that the Master has much more nefarious ideals to play with. So the Doctor tries to make an alliance with him. However, the Doctor, of course, knows that the Master will break that alliance and finds himself in a position where Logopolis has no more thinkers to keep the planet alive. And of course, the only other way to fix the problem with the TARDIS is to go to Jodrell Bank and go to the giant antennae. The Doctor then follows the Master up the antennae and finds himself in a position in which he is about to face his final showdown with his old enemy. People of the universe, please attend carefully. The message that follows is vital to the future of you all. The Master sends that message out across the stars, using it as a beacon all the way to Earth. However, on top of this, the Doctor finds himself chasing the Master across a ramp, but sadly doesn't manage to get to him in time and ends up falling off of the giant scaffold onto the grass. The Doctor then gets ready for regeneration as he finally sees all of the faces of all of his companions. It's the end. The moment has been prepared for. And Tom Baker's Doctor regenerates into Peter Davidson. And that is where this story ends, and another one begins. Change, my dear, and not a moment too soon. The new Doctor begins to get his bearings, ready to chase down the Master. However, little does he know where the Master has actually gone. So, what did I think of the story Logopolis? Absolutely love this story. However, there are a few little minor details that kind of peeve me in this story. For starters, I don't really like that Nyssa just happens to be on the TARDIS. I mean, I love the Keeper of Traken, don't get me wrong, but I really wish we'd at least seen the Doctor go back and find Nyssa, not just have her kind of appear halfway through this episode on the TARDIS and then have her try and help Tegan and Adric through this tough time with the Doctor acting a little bit all over the place. However, a big up for me in this story, I've got to say, is Anthony Ainley's performance as the Master. I love the way that he manages to get in and out of places in this story, and this story really gives us this hint that he's been pulling the strings the whole time. I mean, we start off with the Doctor and him in a kind of predicament where they both end up having to fight for survival. But when the Master realizes that it doesn't affect him anymore, I love the way that he just kind of flips the switch on the Fourth Doctor and says, "Look, I am going to make your life absolute misery, and I'm going to enjoy it." And that's where I feel like the best scene in this whole story is just that absolutely perfect scene at the end before the regeneration, where they're kind of on this rope to rope situation, and it's like the scene from The Lion King, except from the Doctor is Mufasa and the Master is essentially Scar, and the way that they just flip the switch and watch the Doctor fall, I feel like it's perfect in this story. However, one thing I think I should point out, because it's been pointed out recently by the Idiot Lanterns in one of their comedy sketches, is it is a very funny part of canon in this story. How the Fourth Doctor lands on grass and happens to regenerate, yet the 10th Doctor can jump out of a giant skyscraper, land on a marble floor, and somehow survive all enough time just to essentially walk around, meet all these companions, and regenerate. So, RIP for your sacrifice was for nothing. But all jokes aside, ladies and gentlemen, all jokes aside, this is a great story, and for that reason, I give it at least a solid 9 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and we will be doing the Fifth Doctor reviews very soon. Until then, stay beautiful and have an incredible night, you beautiful people.